Good evening. I am Councilwoman Marilyn Rossetti, and welcome to the first Public Works, Parks, Recreation, and Environment Committee meeting of the year 2021. I am the chair, Marilyn Rossetti. My council colleagues are Nick LeBron and Councilman John Gale. Right now, I don't believe we have any other council people with us. We do have a variety of city officials and guests with us. We have our Corp Counsel, Jim Del Visco. We have Brian Gallagher from PRAC. We have the esteemed City Treasurer, Adam Cloud. We have Donna Swar from PRAC. We have Jack Hale from the Tree Commission. We have Kim Oliver from our Parks and Recreation. And I know I'm not saying the full thing, Kim, I'm sorry. We have Mark Dowd from Public Works. We have Troy from Parks. We have Frank Della Ripa from Public Works. And Mike Looney, who is the head of Public Works. And Charmaine Craig. Hello, Charmaine, I see you right there. So I'd like to read the information first. HPA-TV will be broadcasting tonight's City Council Public Works, Parks, Recreation, and the Environment Committee meeting live on Comcast TV channel 96 and Frontier TV channel 6032. It will also be streamed live on hpatv.org and the HPA-TV Facebook page. It will then be made available for future viewing on the HPA-TV YouTube channel. Thank you. That is a mouthful. The first thing on our agenda for this evening is the presentation update for the Park Trust Fund, updates on the Tree Fund, again by our City of Hartford Treasurer, Adam Cloud. Adam, you are on.
Madam Chair, thank you for hosting this evening. Council persons, members of the committee, so nice to see you guys. Happy New Year to all. For those on date debt issuance and addition to custody of fund land, I'm responsible for the maintenance of all trust funds. There are several trust funds throughout the city. One you may know of is valued at around $10 million for us to pay for grown over time through the investment presentation of that my office does through third-party asset managers. And over the years, we have grown the corpus, or that principal amount, to at a high point several years ago, it was just shy of $24 million. And that occurred in June of 2014. It's been hovering around that $22 to $21 million mark. As of December 31st of 2020, the fund is valued at $22.556 million. In fact, the 6 months preceding in June, the value was $19,199,000. So there was a very nice pickup in the last 6 months from the investments that we have at Brandywine Capital Management through the fixed income portfolio that generated that superior return. The chair asked me to kind of give you guys some numbers. In addition to that little bit of history, let me make sure that everyone on the call appreciates how the trust is structured. The trust is structured wherein the income generated off of that principal amount is expended in 3 categories. The first of those categories of expenditures is beautification and conservation. Approximately 70% of the interest earned can be spent yearly for beautification and conservation. 25% of the interest earned can be spent for non-reoccurring capital expenditures. And then 5% can be spent for trees. So there's a separate tree account that allows us to invest those dollars for the purpose of the planting or replanting as needed trees throughout the city of Hartford. And let me caveat, on the tree account, we can plant those trees in the parks in cemeteries, and that's also what we do. This work does not happen in terms of Hartford Park Trust Fund on city sidewalks. It happens in the parks and in the burial grounds located within the city of Hartford. So it has a very specific purpose. Interestingly, one of the reasons why this has become more of an issue, because for many, many years, the Parks Trust Fund, our records go back to around 2006 when my predecessor began to track the expenditures. The challenge at the time was that the city council often was not aware that that money could be expended. And so the interest grew over time. And in 2011, when I became the treasurer, we researched this matter and we released a significant amount of dollars to the city to allow them to expend them because it was there and it never was drawn down against. When we went through the almost bankruptcy in 2017, many of you know we were foreclosed on the opportunity to go to the capital markets. And when we go to the capital markets, we're borrowing for capital improvements, roads, bridges, schools. And so, although we couldn't expend that under the guidance of MARB for a period of 5 years, one of the things that we thought about was if we're going to spend for capital projects out of the general fund and not borrow, we had to narrow the amount of that expenditure. And so what was normally done pre-bankruptcy was there was anywhere between $50 to $100 million of bonding that occurred annually for capital projects. That number is now below $30 million. And what we did was with the $30 million that the mayor sharpened the pencil and looked at what could we actually afford if we were funding it out of the general fund. And then he approached me and said, Mr. Treasurer, it'd be interesting, given the fact that we can't borrow anymore, maybe we can expend some of the Hartford Parks Trust funds to help beautify our parks, of which I agreed. And so what he and I set off to do with the approval of the council was that of that around $12 million principal, we were valued at almost 24. There was about $12 million eligible to be expended. And so what we did was we said, let's come up with a working list of projects that you'd like to spend, knowing that those projects are not going to all come to fruition in year one. Let's expend annually a reasonable amount of money from the trust fund that can fund those projects. And in doing that, and spacing it out over time, that allows me every year to continue to generate interest, even though a line item may be drawn against. So as an example, if there was $2 million for a signage program in the city, and in the first year they spent $500,000 out of the 2 million, maybe I would be able to generate, let's just pick a number, $50,000 of interest income that we could put to that year's interest income, which would allow me to recoup what had been spent. And that way we're keeping the trust healthy while still expending dollars. So let me go back to this issue of the breakout of 70, 30, 70, 25, and 5. What we ended up doing is we came up with a project list, and that project list consists of about 14 line items. Originally, when presented to the council back in 2017, it was a wish list of about $16,450,000 in projects. The mayor narrowed that down to $11,673,000. So since 2019, we have spent $5,097,927 across those 3 years, and I'll break that out. In fiscal year 19, we spent $2,407,000,000. In fiscal 20, we spent 2.709 million. And thus far in fiscal 21, we've spent $18,656. So of the 11 or so that was projected to be expended, 5,097,000 has been spent, and that leaves us a balance of about $6,105,000 to go to those 14 projects that still have not fully been expended. And let me add, when I say fully not expended, that's basically not because the projects aren't being worked on, but it's the timing of the projects. So a line item, as I said, maybe a total of 2 million, but that might get spent over a number of years. And so what we have relative to those existing projects is $6 million. Additionally, we have in the total fund, we have still $22 million, $558,000 in the fund after spending the $5 million over the last 3 years. And again, a lot of that, the value at 22.5 million is based on the interest that we've earned annually as a result of investing those dollars prudently. I'm going to pause there just in case, Madam Chair, there are questions from either you or any other members of the committee.
Is there an average interest annually, or is it too hard to calculate?
Well, it's based on the market
Right.
return. However, I can say that what we used to be able to say confidently before the market became extremely volatile is that we generated usually $600,000 to $650,000 a year in earned interest annually.
Adam, I would think we can wait till the end for questions, if that's okay with my colleagues.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
And then I thought, let me dig into a little deeper what each of those categories means. So for beautification and conservation, the simplest way to explain it is if we want to plant flowers in Bushnell Park, that's a beautification. If we want to repaint a bench, that is something that we would consider beautification and conservation. Another example of that is, if there's something that can enhance the parks, shrubbery or something along those lines, that's absolutely permissible. What's not permissible is reoccurring capital expenditure. So we don't pay for DPW to cut the grass. We will pay if there's a crack in a fountain or a statue, because that's a non-reoccurring capital expenditure. We'll fix that. And in fact, we did provide the dollars to help restore the Indian statue in, what do you call it? In
Corning Fountain.
Yes, thank you. I think we contributed $70,000 towards that total construction process. And so in all of these projects that are listed, let me just give you an example of some of them. Okay. Citywide park signage, lighting and sidewalks for Bushnell Park, Pope Park baseball field, Keeney Park ADA improvements on Vine Street, pond dredging in Goodwin, Pope, and Bushnell, replacement of playscapes, Keeney Park gates and fencing, Goodwin Park golf course irrigation, security cameras, basketball courts, automatic spray pads and irrigation system, forestry sustainability, Colt Park master plan, tree finds and replacement, Emerald Ash Borer Initiative, to name a few, tennis courts at Goodwin Park. Now, that's just a sampling of them. And every year, the council is going to approve, just as part of the capital budget, because the Hartford Parks Trust Fund comes under the capital budget, the ideas and recommendations that come principally from the PRAC. The PRAC, with its jurisdiction, creates, because it's so representative of the various stakeholders, presents ideas to the mayor's office. The mayor shares those ideas with me, which we then forward on to the council. The council approves those, and once approved, if a project wishes to be financed, then a letter by the sponsor, whether it's Bushnell Park Foundation or one of the neighborhood organizations, should write that request to the mayor. That request would then get sent over to me for review, and if it meets the criteria, then we would work with the finance department to have that project financed. Now, those are for outside requests. Many of the requests that are on this list are DPW, required work, where they might even do it themselves or they outsource that work. And so when those invoices come in, the finance department reviews them against this approved list of projects, and my office then signs off on the expenditure, and we pay the invoice for those expenditures. That's kind of the short, most simplistic way to think of how you can request funding, but how we actually work through the system internally to make these things happen.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go into a little more detail with the tree fund?
Yes. Sorry. I actually really wanted to talk about that because, I see Jack is on the call, and Jack, I saw that note today about the flyer. I think that's great news. Give me 1 second as I pull it up. Okay, so in the tree account, there is approximately $337,582 in the account available for expenditure. Tree account really started not as long ago, obviously, as the Hartford Parks Trust Fund, because that was an initiative in 2012 that Mayor Segarra created, and it did not begin with a significant amount of money, because remember, we only took 5% of the annual interest, and so at the time, the income generated that year was $490,000 or something like that. So it was a small amount of money that we've invested, but it has grown. In particular, it has maintained that value of around $33 million consistently over the last several years, with really not a lot of draws against it. There was a draw of $45,000 back in 2015, I believe. But there have not been many draws at all against the tree account.
If that was something that was in the works or has been in the works, how would that again be instituted? Because we do need to work on our tree canopy.
Yes. So, well, what's interesting about the tree canopy issue, it started in a conversation I had several years ago with Prac and some other individuals who were focused on trees, including Jack Hale, was that ash borer problem. And so that is out of the Parks Trust Fund. Those monies are coming out. That's the $200,000 or so that was allocated just for that problem. But as to the canopy and planting trees, I absolutely agree that there's no reason why those monies shouldn't be expended, especially given the hard work that the Tree Commission has been doing to hold people accountable in the city who tear down trees. And there's now a fine associated with you if you improperly take down a tree. And that happens a lot with some of our commercial properties where they will knock down trees. And fortunately, we've had that um, uh, fine be imposed. And by the way, those fines are coming back into the tree account um, so that they are earning interest to help grow um, uh, the corpus of the tree account.
Thank you. Are you, when you're done, let me know, and then I'll go to my colleagues, and then we'll open it up for questions.
I'm good. I mean, I think I've given you.
No, you've actually, Adam, it's a great overview. I think it's prompted a lot of questions, I know, on my part, but I'll start with my colleagues, Councilman Gale, and then Councilman LeBron, and Council President Rosado has joined us, and then we'll open it up to the floor. So, Councilman Gale.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you, Treasurer Cloud. It's always a pleasure to see you, and your presentations are always so very detailed and very good. And I certainly appreciate that. And
thank you, Councilman. Great to see you.
So on the tree fund, maybe you can help me out here. If I, as a council member, want this city to plant, I don't know, pick a number. If I want the city to plant 500 trees next year, and I want to, well, I guess the first question is, can I fund that from this tree fund?
Yes.
And where would that show in the budget? Where would I insert that line item in the budget?
The Hartford Parks Trust Fund budget is a subset of the capital budget in your annual budget.
So this would be an addition to the, if it wasn't already in there, I would have to make an addition to the capital budget. My example, 500 trees at $250 a tree would be $125,000. I would put a line item in for $125,000 to come out of the tree fund.
Yeah, in essence, well, let me say it another way, Councilman. If you had an interest in spending $125,000 out of the tree fund, which has what did I say that number?
227.
Yeah. I mean, you'd nearly wipe us out, but that's fine. That's what it's there for. Yeah, 337.
Oh, 330. I thought you said 227. 337.
337,582.
Okay. Yep.
What I would suggest is when the time comes in the mayor's office, really he principally does it, but I try to talk with him in advance, is that the tree commission knows that number or what they want to do. And so what I would suggest is that as we build into the budget process, start building into that process, the mayor's office has got to be made aware that when he submits the budget, that the budget should reflect an expenditure out of the tree account. And when it comes to the council, you can then check to make sure that that number is reflected in the budget as you are considering the approval of your overall budget.
Perfect.
Does that make sense?
It does. Perfect. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciated.
Because I may have, and I could be wrong, Adam, there was discussion, and Jack, maybe you can, where do I remember a discussion that there was some issues because there was some reimbursables? In other words, their thought was people could purchase the trees up front and then the treasurer would reimburse them. Am I thinking of something else? That was cumbersome for whatever organization was going to try to do that, to not have that kind of capital up front, that this is a way to do it that we wouldn't put somebody in that position. Am I remembering this incorrectly? Jack?
I think maybe I can, if you will, I think I can jump in there a little bit. My understanding from a conversation we had with the treasurer some time ago is that the use of funds from the Parks Trust Fund, including the tree fund, is a reimbursement funding, which means that DPW has to come up with any cash that needs to be spent in the course of carrying out any project. The result is, particularly with tree planting, because you have to buy the trees before you can plant them, is that it has been difficult to actually implement tree planting out of the tree account. And I continue to be puzzled by why the account needs to be a reimbursement account and why it can't be used in a more reasonable way. Not that I would judge whether it's reasonable or not, but that is one issue that it would be great to get sorted out, because it means that we've just been dribbling along with work that can be done where Mike Looney finds some change in his couch and is able to fund the tree planting out of that and then get reimbursed later.
If I may react and respond to that.
Yes, please.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, Jack, that it may be a flawed process because it came out of the tree account came later than the Hartford Parks Trust Fund, but the ordinance that dictates how the tree fund expends dollars is a reimbursable process. Now, the council has every ability, going back to Councilman Gale's question about how you all can be helpful, you can amend the tree ordinance.
Okay.
To have that speak to the need that you just enunciated, Jack, to address that problem.
That is something we will put on our, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We love more work. It's so exciting. So, Councilman Gale, any further questions? Councilman LeBron?
Good.
Sure, I have a couple questions. So through you, Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to speak and ask questions. And Treasurer Cloud, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and presenting to us. The first thing is I want to ask is I saw it seemed like you were reading from some document. Is that document that you were reading off of shareable, or can you share that with me? Hello?
Yeah, in fact, I think we...
Can you hear better now?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. Well, number one, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, my staff updates my website
Okay.
with this information. So it should be readily accessible.
Thank you. And the second thing is, I thought I heard you say that the last time anything was spent out of this was 2015. Is that correct?
Yeah. Let me get that right. It looks like 2014, $45,000 of a withdrawal came out of the tree account.
Okay. Thank you. And then in terms of process, the one highlighted process that I heard was primarily the recommendation is to go through our committee, the PrAC committee, that then goes to the mayor and then goes to you. Is that the right way to, kind of do the funding?
Well, and yes, but let me be more specific. When
Sure.
we're talking about those beautification projects and
Mm-hmm.
the capital expenditure projects,
Mm-hmm.
I think annually that the PrAC should be chatting with the administration, and I actually am an ad hoc member of PrAC, and so when those meetings take place, I'd love to be in the room to be able to make sure that those ideas that are getting germinated and shared with the administration for expenditure, I'm there to check against whether we have enough money, right? Like I said, so we have $22 million, and we can't spend more than 10 of that because the floor is 12 million, so we've got 10 million to spend,
Hey,
right?
at this
Charmaine,
I'm talking
I
about the
don't-
trees.
Charmaine, you're not on mute.
So all I would ask is that in addition to the 5 million that's already been spent, and I said this number before, the 5 million since fiscal 19, including fiscal 19, 20, and 21, that's 5,097,000. That leaves us $6.1 million of that existing set of projects, right? The 14 that I listed. So if we have 14 new projects, I'm happy to make sure that those projects don't exceed how much we actually have to expend. That's the only concern that I would have. Making
right.
sure that the council does not, or PrAC does not create a list that exceeds what we can spend.
Okay, great. And then I remember a few years back, it may have been 4 or 5 years ago, I remember reading in the Hartford Current that there was some funds used from the Park Trust Fund that had to be sent by a certain time for some project, and it was a significant amount. And then the Park Trust Fund was going to be reimbursed for that expenditure. Do you recall that, Treasurer Cloud?
Yes, I do.
What was it? What was it? If you can refresh my memory.
Dillon Stadium.
Dillon Stadium. Okay. Did we get the money back?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. Just want that so that way publicly.
By the way, a little later than I insisted and expected.
Okay.
And I was pretty peeved about that because
Okay. And if you're peeved, I'm peeved with you.
Because let me just break this down so that the record is clear. Dillon Stadium is part of the Colt estate that was bequeathed by the widow Colt. And it ran all the way from like High Ship all the way down to literally, no, not High Ship, from the park all the way down to the river. And so what we did not realize until Corp Council looked into the actual will and trust, that Dillon Stadium is part of that bequeathment. And so, yes, we call it Dillon Stadium, but it's part of Cole Park. And so it was permissible to be able to use proceeds of the Park Trust Fund because it's in a park. Now, the only reason why I was asked to expend those dollars is because at the time that Dillon Stadium was attempting to be finished, they were waiting on the money from the corporate sector, in particular the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. And if you remember, there were some issues around the owners gave a check to a gubernatorial candidate, and then there was a question about the RFP process, and so that got waylaid. And so I was approached and asked whether or not it could happen. And my response was, first, is it legal? And that's when Corp Council did the research to prove that, yes, it was legal, and I double checked it with my counsel. The second was, okay, if I'm going to provide this $2 million to open Dillon Stadium on time, I want guarantees that we get this money back. And we in good faith gave it. and it was supposed to be back in 90 days, and it took far longer than 90 days to get the money back because there was a whole lot of
Stuff
back
going
and
on.
forth about the delivery of the money from the Hartford Parks Foundation. Hartford
So was there interest when we got the money back? Was there any interest accrued?
No, because it wasn't a year. It was maybe 3-4 weeks after.
Okay.
But I was still disturbed.
So I have three smaller questions,
Yes.
and it's more nuanced as to trying to help me at least crystallize in my mind, things that would be permissible as expenditures. So they're on the smaller side. So the first thing is oftentimes in our cemeteries, the young, I'm assuming they're young, but the stones get knocked over. Putting those back up is a cost. Would that be something that would be able to come out of the park trust fund?
That's an interesting question, one that has never confronted me. I'd have to really look at that. I do not want to give an immediate response to that
Sure.
question simply because it requires, I think, a little deeper legal analysis on
Sure.
who in fact's obligation is it? Is it
Right.
the family versus the city? I mean, really, because we're in the case of beautification and kind of non-reoccurring maintenance. The fact they got it's bad, and it may be something that we could do, but I'm not sure, and I'm not willing to say tonight whether that's something that would be permissible.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely won't hold you to that, but I would imagine some of those spaces, is hundreds of years old, right? It's historic, so we wouldn't likely be able to find the families for it. So I'm not sure.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, so maybe again,
yeah,
maybe
sure,
if I were to hook my ladder to something, I would say it could be about beautification.
sure.
By definition, it could be beautification, but
Great.
I can speak with
So
our lawyers on that.
thank you, Treasurer. Just two more, Madam Chair.
Two more, and then you're done.
Yeah, and then I'm done. I promise. So in Colt Park, as we know, we love Colt Park. On the side, there's this hill, and there seems to be only two entrances at Colt Park. One on the east side, and then one where the parking lot is on the west side. However, there is a lot of family members who go down to the softball fields, what used to be football fields, those practice fields, through the foliage. I don't know what the right word is, but the trees and the leaves and stuff on a hill that has a significant slant. And oftentimes people get injured there. If we were to place steps there, could that come out of the trust fund?
Well, you're coming with all the kind of hypotheticals tonight.
Well, we could leave it, so we
no, let me just say that. I mean, generally, as a rule of thumb, the maintenance of our parks is a responsibility of the general fund acting by and through the Department of Public Works.
Correct.
And in my opinion, that would be a construction-related project for the safety and well-being of the city and its residents, which I would think would fall under DPW.
Okay, thank you. And again, I just use it as examples, for broader thoughts and ideas. So thank you very much, Treasurer Cloud. I'll hold my last one because it's along the same vein. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. Council President Rosado.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I had a couple of questions, but they were answered through Councilman Gale regarding the tree fund and a line item in our budget, which we'll have further conversation about this as the budget, as we start heading towards the 2021 budget. But, just wanted to thank Treasurer Cloud for his very detailed presentation, as he always does. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you. We have a couple of agenda items. I don't know if there's anybody, if Brian, Donna, Jack, I know you've talked, if there's anything. If not, we'll go on to the agenda items. Are we all set? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Treasurer. Really excellent job. We're hoping that as we're trying to do with this committee, that you will come back quarterly. Doesn't have to be as detailed, but come visit us and we'll let you know when it is, and we hope to see you soon. You don't feel like you have to stay for the resolution.
Okay, very good.
Uh,
Always available if you
Jack,
need me. Thank
yes,
you.
thank you, Treasurer.
Councilwoman
Yes.
and Mr. Treasurer, I've got a couple of questions. If I
Oh, you
could
do,
ask.
Jack. Okay, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Yeah. Sorry. And these are probably going to head us into a much longer conversation, but my recollection, I'm old, and I was around when the Hartford Parks Trust Fund was established through some very effective politicking when the land associated with Patterson Park was sold off. My recollection is that the primary concern at the time was that the funds not be used for ongoing maintenance. Instead, that it should be the Hartford Parks Trust Fund proceeds should be devoted to capital projects. And for some reason, the interpretation of that, either I am not remembering it correctly, or it has kind of crept into something else. The 25% came later, and that was an initiative of Councilman Mike McGarry, who pointed out that it was a dumb idea, that's a technical term, to fund capital projects without the ability to maintain them. And so my understanding was that the 25% was a carve out to be able to pay for maintenance related to the projects that had been carried out under the larger portion of the fund. And I'd like to see if we could go back to review the original language and try to figure out whether I've lost my mind or whether we really ought to be kind of rethinking how some of this stuff works. And the same thing goes for the tree fund or tree account. It was established through the tree ordinance. And I'm certain that the tree ordinance did not specify that the funds in that account could only be used in parks and cemeteries. So I'm curious where that limitation came from. So if you've got quick answers, Adam, I'd like to hear them, but otherwise, I'd just like to see a little bit of research done and figure out where we really are.
So let me go in reverse. When I was talking about sidewalk work, I wanted to make sure I was being clear about the idea that I was really referencing what we do, and I should rephrase because you're right. I shouldn't have put that restriction on citywide for trees. I was thinking in my mind about the Hartford Parks Trust Fund, not the tree account. So you're correct. We can do trees wherever we need to do trees. So I agree with you on that. And I'm glad you made that clarification. I do want to dig a little deeper into that first issue you raised, because I too was around when this whole thing came up with McGarry and the spinoff. But what happened subsequent to McGarry was I got into a very large debate with then Corp Counsel Sandra Key Borges, where I agreed with you at the time, and my argument was, what are you talking about? Like, we're not going to spend all this money on soft dollar cost. And she broadened the definition of capital expenditure and presented that and got that approved as a definition that was far more inclusive than it historically had been relative to capital expenditures. And so I didn't, and it was in line with McGarry's idea, which was, well, how can you, well, her argument was, how can you approve a project, but if you didn't have the architectural drawings paid for as well out of the fund? And I was trying to take a hard line to say, too bad. Like, I don't think you should do that. That got into a very large debate with our lawyers, and our lawyers at Robinson Cole gave me a whole memo on the definition of a capital expenditure. And unfortunately, I lost that argument because it was very broad, the subject or definition of what a capital expenditure. It can include some of those soft costs associated with a project. And so that's where the creep came in. But generally, I want to be clear, and the language is thrown around a lot, but, and I think you and I are saying the same thing. It's defined as non-reoccurring capital. Said another way, not regular maintenance, right? So if it's regular maintenance stuff, that's not included. If it's non-regular, and I don't want to use this term because it also gives some discretion on my point to argue with the administration at times over this same issue, right? Because there are many times when I'm getting requests that try to fit inside the definition of non-reoccurring. And I don't always agree that what should be considered regular operations, it tries to get thrown into this bucket. And so I do push back on that quite a bit with the finance department, through the request from whatever department is requesting it. Because I think, going back to its original essence, these monies were created really for conservation and beautification of the city of Hartford's parks and burial grounds. And we can't lose sight of that, right? Because maybe I'm a original intentist on reading what the words meant, but they were in such bad shape at the 2005 2006 period of time and no money had been spent. And what really happened when I got on board was, once that I released a couple $1 million in 2012, then everybody, including then corp counsel, or I don't remember if she was corp counsel then or city manager, was like, oh, well, that sounds exciting. Can we spend more? And so, to be candid, I'm always trying to hold on to the pennies for as long as I can, provided they meet the criteria, right? Because otherwise, then we would have disorder.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack.
That's good.
And again, Jack, anytime you want to delve deeper into some of these things, let's talk about it. So thank you again. If there aren't any other questions, we're going to say goodbye to our esteemed treasurer, or he can stay on the line. I mean, I'm sure he wants to talk about the golf course fees and the cart, but don't feel like you have to. I'm giving you a reprieve. So thank you again for coming. So that brings us to agenda item 2, which is Mayor Bronin with an accompanying resolution authorizing the 2021 fees for the 2 city-owned golf courses in Keeney and Goodwin Park. Is there someone here to speak to that?
Yes, Madam Chair. For the record, Michael Looney, Director.
Hello, Michael.
Good evening. Yes, we're here tonight with a draft resolution authorizing the fees and the golf fees for our 2 golf courses for the calendar year 2021 coming up. The fees that we've proposed as part of this resolution were developed after an analysis done in October and November by our PGA consultants, analysis of rates charged at other regional courses around the greater Hartford area, and analysis of rounds played and revenue generated through greens fees for the 2020 season up to that point. And we've made some adjustments upwards. We've kept a number of the categories of greens fees at 0% increase, but others we've increased anywhere from 50 cents per round to, I think in about 4 cases, we had an increase of $2 per round. Generally, just looking at the courses around the region, we are, our rates are very competitive. We're below the average of these courses by a significant amount in most categories. Other certain categories, we're pretty close to the average, and we basically kept those rates unchanged. But for the categories where we are anywhere from $5 to $8 below average per round compared to our competition for Keeney and Goodwin, we have made $1.50 to $2 increase in the fees for next year. So those fees are laid out as part of the body of this resolution, and we presented these rates to the Golf Course Oversight Commission at its regular meeting in November 2020, and then brought them forward to council after a recommendation to do so from the Oversight Commission. So again, would be happy to talk about any specific questions that members of the committee have regarding these rates. Yeah, that's pretty much where we are.
How does that bring us in line with, I know our big discussion has been with both courses, as far as what, generating revenue or working at a revenue neutral, in other words, not losing money to sustain our courses, which, certainly Keeney and Goodwin. How does that work with the fee increases?
Well, with the fee increases, we've estimated that we would increase revenues by about a little over $63,000 per year for the two courses combined. Quite frankly, this fiscal year, and in fact this calendar year, both golf courses have had very good years. Goodwin probably the strongest year in its history in terms of revenue generation and rounds played. So this does, I think these revenues, the additional revenue we would get from these fee increases, really helps keep us on track to get to that at least revenue or profit loss neutral position. That is my target going forward. Also, we've gotten new golf carts at Goodwin. We're also in the process of acquiring new golf carts for Keeney. So we've increased the golf cart fee at each of the courses to sort of reflect that we're not having older carts now. We have brand new carts for the golfers to enjoy, and we can recapture some of that, the cost involved with those leases by raising the fee by, I believe, $1 at each course. So that's another way we're looking to try to keep our revenues at pace with our expenditures, and hopefully revenues exceed them.
Thank you. My colleagues, Councilman Gale, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Looney. Talk a little bit about profit and loss, if you will. You mentioned this current calendar year, or last calendar year, 2020 was a banner year. Did the revenue actually add to the general fund, or are the general fund still subsidizing the golf courses?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, Councilman. Beginning with just looking at the numbers for this fiscal year to date. Again, that's only half of the golf season. Well, first I'll start off by saying that yes, in fiscal year 2020, we did receive money. I believe it was $240,000 from the general fund to supplement what we had in our golf enterprise fund. However, this year we have not made, even though it's in the budget, it's budgeted. I have not made the request of finance to our finance folks for that for two reasons. First of all, our golf enterprise fund balance right now is at about $665,000. That may be the strongest balance we've had in that account going into our off season. That that at least I can remember in my couple of years being here. Right now, obviously, we're in that part of the year where we have no revenue, but we still have expenses coming in, and that balance is meant to kind of tide us through until spring starts up and we can start generating revenue again. So I'm pleased with the fund balance, and I think we're in a good position right now. The second, just looking again at this fiscal year 21, I pulled out the numbers today. Between Goodwin and Keeney combined, so far in this fiscal year, it appears that revenues have exceeded expenditures by about $447,000. So we are in a significantly stronger position than we've been in previous years. Now, obviously, that number doesn't include pricing and depreciation, which is about $210,000 a year. So you figure you cut that 447 in half on June 30th. But the season we had at Goodwin it was quite frank. The only word for it really is incredible. I was looking at our golf report for the calendar year 2020 through December 2nd that was presented at our last Oversight Commission meeting, and we broke 40,000 rounds at Goodwin this year. I went back and looked at the report for the same time in 2019, and we had 25,000 rounds.
Wow.
Goodwin just went off the chart, and I did not think it was possible to break 40,000 rounds, especially in a single year, to go from 25 to 40. But we had two things working in our favor. We had outstanding dry weather for most of the summer. I mean, that has the negative impact of that we're in a significant drought all summer, and that has other costs associated with it, such as watering the golf course and irrigation. And also the entire pandemic. Golf became an activity that a lot of folks turn to because of sort of the natural social distancing that goes on when you're on a golf course. And Goodwin just became extremely popular. Not to be outdone, but a little bit less substantial as Keeney, which as of December 2nd of this past year, 2020, we were just under 32,000 rounds. At that time in 2019, we were just under 25,000. So Keeney has seen was about 7,000 rounds above where it was in 2019. So all told, when you look at that, we're just over 72,000 rounds for 2020, and we were just under 50,000 rounds in 2019. So we had about a 30% increase in rounds played this year. So I think we're getting to where I was hoping we would get to, and I want to keep the momentum going. And I think the fees that we're proposing as part of this resolution, keep us on that track. They're not, not increases of such size that it would have a real negative impact on the number of rounds played. It does have a slight negative impact on the rounds played. We are so far ahead of where we were in 2019. We could actually take a small decrease, or actually a pretty decent decrease in rounds played, and these additional $1, $2 fees per round would really help cover that and keep us at a similar revenue profile. The question is, can we get 40,000 rounds again, or was this just a one-year thing? I want to do everything we can to make sure this is what we see more years like this going forward. Of course, a lot of that is out of our hands with the weather, but I'm confident that we're heading in the right direction here. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
Oh, greatly appreciated.
No, excellent. Thank you. Councilman Gale, are you done?
Done. Thank you.
Yep. Councilman LeBron?
Sure. So Director Looney, so through you, Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to ask questions. Director Looney, so if I'm hearing you correctly, you stated that we had record rounds, I guess it's called, at both Keeney and Goodwin, but yet we're still at a deficit. So the question I have is that with the hopes of increasing the rounds by golfers at the golf courses, do we have the structure to physically be able to withstand any increases so that way we can start beginning to see profits? Or do you think that more investments are going to be needed in order to grow this? It's more of a bandwidth question. I don't know if that makes sense.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes. Just one minor correction, Councilman LeBron. At this point for fiscal year 21, we don't have a deficit. We're operating in the black by a pretty significant margin. So I'm hoping that, kind of how we're doing things now and how things are operating will be what we need to just keep us on a path to, at the very least, breaking even, but obviously with the goal of being profitable. And I think we have that structure in place now.
Thank you. Next question I have is, how do we compare comparable in terms to the golf courses in the region? How would we compare with this fee increase compared to the golf courses in, let's say, Hartford County, the area, or the nearest 10 golf courses? What would your thoughts be on that?
Sure. So you, Madam Chair. We looked at, Councilman, let's see, I'm just looking at my sheet, 8 courses around the region. Rockledge Golf Course, Wintonberry Hills, Stanley Golf Course down in New Britain, Timberland, East Hartford Golf Club, Simsbury Farm, Westwoods Golf Course. Those are the 8. When we looked at Goodwin, because Goodwin has historically had a lower cost, been the lower cost of the two golf courses to play, we looked at, out of the 8 courses I just rattled off, we looked at the 6 lowest courses in terms of green speed. So the 2 most expensive ones out of those 8, we just kind of tossed out because they would skew the average too much when you're trying to compare it to Goodwin. So when we average the lowest 6 and compared it to Goodwin, just to give you an example, let's see, a good example here. Our non-resident 18-hole weekend rate at Goodwin is about $4.25 lower than the average for the other courses around the region. So our rate in 2020 was $35, and the average was about $39.25. We have a similar situation in Keeney, where most of our rates are below the average. We have a couple instances where they are slightly higher or just about even with the average. But we are generally, very cost competitive with the surrounding courses in the region. And I think that's been a, part of a reason for the success number of rounds is that in this year, people start looking around and things are a little bit tougher economically. Folks are looking to save wherever they can. They see these 2 beautiful courses in Hartford and say, geez, this is, $6 per round less than the course in my hometown, and it's not that far away. Maybe I'll give this a shot. And if they come and they have a good experience, they keep coming back. So when we're cost competitive like that, it's advantageous to us, but you also have to remember you don't want to be so far below the average that you're actually essentially shooting yourself in the foot and not getting the revenue that you could get. So it's raising the rates the way we have here between 50 cents to $2 in a couple of cases is trying to find that balance point between raising it enough that we capture the revenue we really should be capturing without cutting into our supply of rounds, for lack of a better term.
So,
That's we are. The simple answer is we are cost competitive compared to our competition in surrounding town.
so on the theme of if we build it, they will come. In terms of economics and golfers' economics and statistics, is there any kind of variable besides the direct cost of someone paying for rounds or whatever they're paying for at the golf courses? Is there any kind of economic assessments or anything out there of what potential golfers from outside of communities bring in terms of financial impact to cities? So, for example, they'll visit, bakeries, restaurants, maybe visit the science center, like those type of things. Is there any kind of cost analysis, one? And number two, are we able to get anything like that so we can show the economic impacts of what this brings to our city?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, Councilman, that analysis has been done in one instance since I've been here, which was last year when we had, back in 2019, when we had the 2 national championship tournaments up at Keeney. The PGA of Connecticut worked with a consultant to basically do an economic impact analysis of what the overall economic impact of all these families coming to see it was the 2 the boys and girls junior national championships, what the impact was of those folks coming in and staying in Hartford hotels and dining out and spending dollars locally. And I have that analysis. I'd be happy to pass that along to you just so you can see what something like that looks like. We don't do that regularly, but that can be done. There are consultants that provide that sort of economic impact analysis. They're typically done for, recreation facilities like stadiums and things of that nature. So there are entities that do that out there. And
Thank you.
Common sense just tells you, like you were saying, someone who went and played a round at Goodwin, might stop at first and last on their way home, might stop at the gas station to fill up. There are ways of doing that analysis, and there are firms that do that. We don't internally do that. It's a little bit beyond our capabilities at this point, but certainly something that I would be interested in looking into as well.
Yeah, thank you, Director. If you could share whatever you have with those tournaments, and then also in terms of whatever document you have, in terms of making it simple for me in terms of looking at, how we're in the black and whatever you think would be easy on the eye, easily readable. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Director, for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilman. So,
Madam Chair?
yes,
Excuse me. I certainly didn't get off.
I see. Thank you.
This is very intriguing to me. Anybody knows me, I'm a golf fanatic. And I was part of the original group that created the golf task force. And in my current role, I should mention a couple things. One, Michael has done an amazing job in DPW, because Keeney Golf Course, and those are not in the golf space don't realize, it is a prize gem in the region, let alone the state. And as a result of that, that's why the Connecticut Junior Championship happened. And I would suggest, and we've got to be focused on monetizing our asset. And that means marketing it a little stronger than we did. I know we've had some cuts, but that asset for golfers, a public track that is by the designer who was world famous, and the improvements that were made to it have turned it into literally a championship style golf course. And so that's why folks from South Windsor and Glastonbury and Simsbury are literally coming to Keeney. Not to mention that it was some of the Hartford Parks Trust Fund that helped build the back patio, where now you can have drinks and sit under the lights And that space, rental income, the restaurant, the improvements to the parking facility and the lighting has really turned it into a very nice spot. I wanted to add though, because I think the fundamental challenge, because historically we have always run in the red, right? And golf courses across the nation don't really make money. A lot of municipalities lose money on golf courses. However, I think we can break that mold. I think we can break that mold, but it's going to need us to go back and have council engaged, because the contract that's in place, I think, should be renewed, or excuse me, reviewed and looked at with a different set of eyes than it was when it was originally created. One. And to that end, this fall, I asked for the Internal Audit Commission to perform an audit on the golf course revenue management of the accounts and the operations over at Goodwin. And the reason I did that was because a couple of years ago, when the contract was renewed at Keeney, an audit was performed, but Goodwin didn't have one. And since we just entered with a new professional, I thought it only fair and appropriate to look at to test some of the internal accounts and the accuracy of all the transactions, driven mostly because finance, and I think, as the keepers of the in and out of cash of the city of Hartford out of the budget, we were concerned, not really concerned, we just want to make sure everything is according to Hoyle, right? Because if there's places where we can shorten up that deficit so that it's not coming out of the general fund, let's try and find out where those efficiencies are. So that audit hopefully should be completed by the end of this month. And I'm hopeful that it will give some guidance on whether or not there are other things we can look at that would help us shorten that deficit and maybe turn a deficit into a profit going forward.
Well, that's an excellent addition. Thank you very much. So I don't know if my colleagues, we'll put this forward. Do I have a motion? Yes, Councilman Gale.
I move to send this back to council with a favorable recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? That passes. It will go back with a favorable recommendation. That brings us to agenda item 3, which is Mayor Bronin with accompanying resolution that will authorize the city to enter into an agreement to replace its old golf carts and service vehicles with upgraded electric golf cars. I think it means carts at Keeney Park Golf Course. Mike, are you going to speak to that also? And then I have some questions.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll speak to this. This resolution that we're bringing forward tonight is designed to authorize the city to enter into an agreement, a lease agreement with Club Car to replace our old fleet of golf carts up at Keeney and replace the existing diesel-powered carts with electric golf carts that have lithium batteries. We will be getting 60 of these golf carts, same number we have now. In addition, we would have 2 gasoline utility vehicles and 2 other golf carts with box beds that allow them to be used to move materials around. The lease extension would be for 5 years, same as the previous lease that we had with Club Car. The extension, the per month cost of the extension is a little bit over $10,000. Right now, we're paying a little bit over $11,000, or we were paying a little over $11,000 per month on our old lease, which is now expired, and the old golf carts have been returned to Club Car. The total annual cost of the extension would be a little over $61,000. We do 6 months of payments through the year, and then it's basically 6 months on, 6 months off, and each month is about $10,200. So right off the bat, we'd be saving about $5,000 a year just on lease costs, and we have a brand new fleet of carts. In addition, switching from diesel to electric will probably, when you net the difference between charging costs in terms of the cost of electricity versus the cost of diesel fuel, will probably save somewhere in the area, we're estimating between $3,000 and $4,000 a year in fuel costs. And having this new fleet of carts is going to, be a tool for supporting the modest increase in the golf cart rental fee, as we discussed on the earlier item, which is by our estimation likely to bring in somewhere around $12,500 in cart fees annually. So within that first year, we're already looking at a net positive to the Keeney golf course budget of close to $20,000. So that's the biggest advantage. Well, of course, there's also the environmental benefits of getting away from diesel vehicles, which is a kind of an added bonus to this. The lease also includes weekly service, winterization of the fleet, and includes a maintenance agreement for the 5 years to cover repairs that might need to be made, and that's at no additional cost to us. So those are essentially the highlights of what we're looking to do, and again, be happy to take any questions.
Now, Mike, when I go back to, we did the Goodwin golf carts, and I know maybe it's not apples to apples, back in June, that resolution, there was, and again, this was from the mayor's office, and then I think we discussed it, there was the 5-year agreement was approximately $292,000, but you said after, I think there was something about it became revenue neutral after, accounting for the fees, and is there something along those lines with this also?
I don't have that at my fingertips right now, but I can.
But can we assume if that was? I mean, again, I know it's not they're different carts, but can we assume there's something like that because of what we had, or can you get that back to us?
I could get some more detail back to you. I mean,
do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Councilman Gale?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. The only question I have for Director Looney is if I can engage his services to negotiate my contracts. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sounds like a pretty sweet deal. So I have no other questions.
Because Director Looney, you don't need anything else to do, but that's okay. Councilman LeBron.
So the question I have is, so I'm looking back at the agenda from December 14th. There is no mention of any pricing at all in this. What is the exact price? Can we assume it's the same as Goodwin? Through you, Madam Chair. My apologies.
Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair. I apologize. Through you, Director Loney. Yeah, I don't see anything in terms of costs associated with the what was put in as a resolution.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, that's correct, Councilman LeBron. The exact amount of the lease per month is $10,219.80. That compares to $11,088.60, which we've been paying on a 6-month cycle for the past 5 years. So if you look at the annual cost, it's $61,318.80, and you multiply that by 5 years, you're somewhere in the area of $308,000 for the full 5-year period.
Okay, and then the profit you said was somewhere near $20,000 per year. Was that correct?
That's possible.
Obviously, there's a lot of variables involved, but your hopes are that it would bring $20,000 a year.
I mean, right off the bat, we're going to save $5,000 a year just in lease.
Okay.
Because they're electric, we're going to come out net positive in terms of fuel costs by 3,000 to 4,000. Let's say a bare minimum, you could say 8,000 or 9,000 to the good, just by making this switch. And then, you know, it's hard to support a cart fee increase if you don't have really
Good cards.
Yeah.
You don't have the product to back it up. And if, you know, anyone says, you know, geez, you know, we're still driving around in these 2012 carts and you're asking me to pay another $2, you know, that can turn off.
I get it.
We want
Obviously, yeah.
product so we can support, you know, asking folks to put up a little bit more money.
Right. So obviously I'm not a golfer because I just assumed like when you pay for the fees to golf, you get a golf cart, but apparently not. Okay. So it's good to know. Thank you for informing me, Director, on that. And how like what is the percentage of golfers that use golf carts as opposed to walking?
I did this analysis last year, I believe, when we were working on the budget. I think it's somewhere in the area of 60 to 70% of 18-hole rounds, folks use carts.
Right.
For nine-hole rounds, it's lower. It's probably under percent, probably somewhere in the 40s.
So not only will we make more revenue potentially per cart, but I guess one could assume that if we have a better quality cart, then therefore the percentage of golfers would probably increase as well.
That would be the hope.
Okay. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Director Looney. I believe those are questions. Do I have a motion?
Sure. Move to send this back with a favorable recommendation.
Is there
I second the motion.
Is there a second? Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Resolution passes with a favorable recommendation. Thank you very much. That brings us to agenda item 4, other business. Do we have any other business? Yes, Councilman LeBron.
Yes, 2 quick questions. So the first question is for Director Looney. The charging stations, the electric thing, aren't they like you have to charge them, or do you just plug them into whatever outlets that we have?
Through you, Madam Chair, is this in reference to the golf carts?
Yes, yes, sir.
We have to make some modifications to the electrical supply at the cart barn. That initially was something that gave me some concern, because if we had an outside contractor come in and do that, I think the cost, you know, could be, you know, in tens of thousands of dollars. However, Frank Della Ripa, our city engineer, and I have been talking about this, and we believe our electricians on staff will be able to perform the work necessary to make those modifications, which will obviously save us having to use capital funds to upgrade the electric supply up there.
Oh, so, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'd much rather have our folks do it in-house wherever possible, without compromising any other projects we got to work on.
And through you, Madam Chair, last question. Are there any youth programs for city kids at the golf courses currently? I don't know if it's a recreation question. I see my recreation people's here. You know, do we have any youth programs at any of these golf courses? Because I'm just, you know, yeah, anyway, I'll just leave that question at that.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, there are some programs up at I think at both Keeney and Goodwin. That is PGA Connecticut section has been very helpful working with our golf pros and setting those up. But right now we're in the process of hiring a golf operations manager position here in DPW. Now that the PGA's consulting contract has sunset as of December 31st, we're bringing on a staff person to just focus solely on golf. One of the charges I'm going to be giving that person is that what we need to do going forward is to be as active as possible, getting into the community and getting golf out into the community conversation, particularly among the demographic groups that might normally not have had any experience with golf, and that's oriented a lot towards the youth in Hartford. So that's something I want to see happen, because the only way we're going to keep our numbers up over the long term, when you look over the course of decades instead of years, is that you have to bring up new people interested in the game. And I think good work has been done in getting penetration into the community, both for women golfers and youth golfers. But there's obviously always more we can do, and that's going to be a big focus of the work we're going to be doing with the individual in this new position to help get even more community involvement in our golf courses.
And Councilman LeBron, to that question, Franklin Perry, who's a new golf commission member, he and I have had some extensive conversations about trying to, I don't know if we notwithstanding Director Looney's position, if we do something, we were talking about at one point in the city, if anybody ever had thought, ebony horsewomen, people would be riding horses, or the things that we've learned to bring to the city and to our youth and to our adults. So we've had some start conversations on how do we bring this to people who maybe it's not been accessible to, why they'd want to do it, into the neighborhoods, through the schools, through the parents. So it is a conversation that started and should grow and continue. Yes, Councilman Gale.
Let me just add my voice to that. I don't know if this what the status currently is of golf teams at any of our high schools. Traditionally, all the high schools had a golf team, and that's certainly one way of introducing a lot of young people to golf. But I fear that the Hartford board has taken so much away from these high school. I don't know if it's budgetary concerns or whatnot, but it does seem like the number of sports programs at the high school seems to be dramatically diminished. I see we have Brian Gallagher on with us.
And also, I don't know if Director Oliver, who's sat here very patiently, if she has, first of all, thank you for you and Troy for coming. I don't know if you have anything, and then Brian, you can comment. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation, please.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Yes, you are correct, Councilman Gale. There definitely were high school teams for golf. In fact, that's how many of us Hartford residents learned about golf. You could go out and usually if you weren't playing, you had a friend who was playing this very strange and interesting game that was called golf, right? I know that, there was some staffing turnover in the central office in regards to sports. And my understanding is they have identified someone to be a consolidated or dedicated contact in terms of the central office moving forward. So I think there'll be more opportunity now for some coordination around that. In addition, as many of you guys probably know, I'm a Board of Ed member. So we are beginning to look at the budget and already talking about issues around sports and some of the investments the superintendent would like to make in that space, including middle school sports, which I think would also be a great opportunity. So I think it's one of those things to Director Looney's point. While there definitely has been some penetration, I think it's a great opportunity, especially because of the pandemic and the world we're living in right now, because a lot of people are turning to golf as a way to go outside and enjoy our parks. And so we would be very supportive in recreation to coordinate, and not just with Department of Public Works, but also with the school system on doing something together.
Thank you, Director Oliver. Brian.
Hello, everybody. Yes, first of all, golf courses are awesome right now. Mike, to what you guys were saying earlier, Keeney, Goodwin are both in amazing shape. I played a lot of golf this pandemic. Once the wife gave me approval to go outside. I played a lot of golf this spring and the fall. But in terms of the high school sports teams, there's only one left. That is how I learned how to play golf. I played for Hartford High. I was a city champion 2 years in a row. But in the last probably 5 or 6 years, they've, one by one fallen off. So right now, the only one left is University Math and Science Academy, the magnet school is the only one left. None of the main high schools have one. Classical had one up until 2 years ago, and then that got cut. So that's pretty much it. So just one left at one of the magnet schools. And I don't know if there's any actual Hartford kids who played on the team in the last 2 years.
Thank you, Brian. Any other questions?
This is Craig, the co-chair of PrAC. I just want to say, and I know.
Where are you,
that,
Craig? I didn't even see you. Where are you?
That's all
Are
right.
you call-in
That's all
user
right.
too?
Yeah, I'm caller. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hi,
But,
Craig.
Through Director Looney, I would encourage the Golf Oversight Committee to further that, we talk about the future golfers, the marketing of these fabulous courses that we now have. And I, like Brian, had a great opportunity to play both courses several times this past year. But I would encourage the Golf Oversight Committee and this new person that you're bringing in to look at the way the camps are structured. There are golf camps that exist. I think the challenge, if we're going to encourage our youth, is to make it affordable. And I don't know if it's possible through your fund balance to offer scholarships. When we got approval at Riverfront to start the high school rowing program, it had to be free for Hartford youth. And so my suggestion or comment here would be to look at ways of growing the camps, but you have to make it affordable for Hartford youth, because the pricing right now for those camps pushes out Hartford youth. It's very difficult for them to afford that. So I would encourage the new person coming in, and the way that the Golf Oversight Committee looks at this is to figure out a way to encourage more camps for Hartford youth to get them in this great sport. And if it's through other funding, to offer scholarships to make it affordable for those kids. That's just my thought. I think it's really important. It's a great game, and I think it's a great way to grow our recreational programs with these two municipal courses.
Great point, Craig. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That was questions and comments for other business. That if there aren't any other, that will bring us to agenda item 5, which is adjourn. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to adjourn through you, Madam Chair.
There's a second. Thank you. I believe we're all in favor. So I want to thank you all very much. I think this was a great meeting. Thank you, Director Oliver. It was good to see you, Brian, Mark, Troy, Craig, who was incognito, Charmaine, Director Looney, Patrol, Jim. So thank you all for coming, and Treasurer Cloud, and we will see you, I think, next month. If not, we'll see you sometime. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.